What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. So, we are going to do an update on the Middle East, um, the recent activities and stuff that's been going on over there, if I speak properly. Um, so, okay, it's just like it seems like every time you hear something coming out of the Middle East, it just continues to feel like things are just on the brink of you know total collapse, or just people, one bad judgment on, a bomb dropped or something like that, and all hell could break loose. But um as we know, we've had, there's several things here. One, Yemen. We've had the U.S. itself has been, dropping bombs on Yemen almost daily, now for over a month. Um, and to try to discourage, or take away the ability for the Houthis in Yemen to be able to do their counter attacks and stuff, or their um, managing, restriction rather restricting Israeli boats and stuff like that, ships and stuff from getting to their ports and things, which is what they've been doing, pretty much since the last uh, uh, ceasefire, and the U.S. has been doing this to try to discourage, right, and try to, you know, cause enough damage that they won't be able to do anything or whatever. But that has not been the case. The as much as the U.S. has tried bombing specific places, uh, and and positions that they think the Houthis either have some kind of control over, or trying to damage facilities or whatever that they might have, whatever. They haven't been able to do enough damage, or to do enough to really hold them back. They're still able to, because they're so embedded in the land there, stuff underground and all that kind of stuff. They just can't. There's just it's a very hard to do anything, especially if you are attempting to limit what you're dropping. And I think the U.S. is to some degree limiting that, but we are still been dropping stuff pretty regularly, pretty practically every day for the past a little over a month. And so the other day, the Houthis were able to actually send out an air missile, and with a drone strike on Israel, that they took, um, uh, acknowledgement of. When it hit an airport in Israel, which the missile was able to break through the air defense system, the Iron Dome of Israel, even though apparently Israel and the U.S. attempted to try to take this missile down and they failed, but the missile actually did hit. I do not believe there was any injured. By the last I heard, it did a little damage to the airport area, or outside the airport area, something like that. But I don't believe there was anybody injured. Uh, Israel, of course, immediately said that they were going to retaliate at any point that they want to. Well, they turned around today. Apparently, they did. They hit a seaport in Yemen, the Hodeidah or whatever like that, however you say that port, which is kind of one of the main ports that the Yemenis get, like food supplies, medicine, things like that. Things that they use. It's not the only port, but it's one of their main ones. Uh, and so there was some damage done, of some people hurt. They also struck a cement plant. Israel claimed that it was a plant that was being used by the Houthis to either store stuff, or to do organizational things or whatever. But some Yemenis officials or people in the area stated there was reporting that no, that is actually a cement plant that produces cement for construction stuff and things like that. And there were like I think 20 people or so hurt, injured at that plant for that. So this is like the ongoing thing, even from all the U.S. bombs dropped. It's mostly the people being injured or, actually regular civilians and stuff like that. They're not really attacking or actually getting a hold of the Houthi, rebels or anything like that. So it's basically just as everything that's been going on, you're mostly hurting more civilians than you are doing any damage to any kind of what you would they would consider terrorist or something. So uh, that in itself is a problem. It's a war crime. It's an issue, and both the U.S. and Israel are participating in that. So take that as you will. Then you have, of course, on the Iran side, because of Yemen, they're blaming. The whole argument is that Iran, Yemen is just one of those uh, auxiliary kind of uh, expansions of Iran, which is not exactly correct, but I mean they all these what we've discussed before, from Hamas to the Houthis to um, the the ones in Lebanon. Uh, my mind's blanking on them. Anyways, they all have their own statutes, their own they are their own independent groups that have their own reasonings behind any kind of actions that they take. They aren't necessarily controlled by Iran in any kind of way. Iran can try to attempt to control or deter them from making actions or whatnot, but ultimately the actions are taken by these groups independently. Uh, the Iran does help supply them, along with many other nations. It's not just Iran, but Iran does help supply them with weaponry and stuff like that. But yes, anyways, but as far as Israel is concerned, they are a branch of Iran. So anything that someone like the Houthis or Hamas does or anything like that, it's all the blame on Iran. So they're immediately, if if they continue to do this stuff, then we're going to then we're going to directly attack Iran, and that's their argument, which we just had. I think it was last week. There was an attack, an explosion at a some type of facility. I can't remember what kind of facility it is now, but it was a explosion at an Iranian. It may have been a nuclear facility, but and Iran themselves come out and said that it was like it's a faulty issue that happened and caused the explosion. But then we found out later on that it was an Israeli official, I believe it was, kind of hinted that it was actually an Israeli attack. That it could have been an Israeli attack. So it's kind of was. I don't think it has ever been kind of full out determined or like expressed by Israel that it was them that did that. In Iran, it could have just been sort of trying to squash the story because they didn't want it to escalate or interfere with talks that they are having or trying to have with the U.S. as far as making a deal again. And they didn't want that to be, messed up. But we have had clear talks or clear expression from Trump that, he expects there to be a deal made, and if not, if there's not a deal made, then basically, all hands off. Like, Israel going to do what they want. Even we are, potentially could get involved and, uh, use our military might as well on Iran, which is very concerning and dangerous for us. It was infamously, said a couple weeks ago by Trump in an interview that not only is he, when asked if we could be pulled into a war or military issue or whatever when it comes to Iran by Israel, could we potentially be pulled into one? And he said, no, I won't be pulled into one, or I won't be coerced into one. He's like, I'll do it willingly. So, which was like just bonkers that he would actually say something like that. So anyways, so after all that, so today, I think it was yesterday, the Israeli Security Cabinet approved a plan to expand the Gaza offensive. So we're on Gaza here. Netanyahu said on Monday that Gaza's Palestinian population will be moved for its own protection. So they are planning on forcibly moving the Gaza population, the Palestinians, to the south of Rafah, and in the whole northern half, and they're going to be doing military actions for basically as long as they need to. It could be months of military actions, basically trying to, go after all of Hamas that's potentially in the northern of Gaza, or whatever the case. And any kind of expansion they make, they are going to settle and will not leave the area. So I have a video here that I'm going to play that sort of goes over all of this. It is from Al Jazeera English. So let me swap over. And hold on a second. Okay, sorry. All right, there we go. Let's take a listen.
In a unanimous decision, Israel's security cabinet voted to broaden its military offensive in Gaza, seize Palestinian territory, and occupy the Strip. According to Israeli officials, the plan will force Palestinians into southern Gaza, and the Israeli army would engage in what's being described as intensive fighting for months. And within Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, far-right members say a decision like this was long overdue.
It's clear there won't be any in-and-out operations. We'll recruit reserve soldiers to enter and control the ground.
From the moment the military operation begins, the areas we will occupy, we will not leave them.
The move has been criticized by family members of Israeli captives, saying escalating the fighting will leave their loved ones in Gaza abandoned and put their lives at further risk.
We are all under the understanding that the continuation of the war will not bring the hostages back.
Satellite images captured within the last week revealed the Israeli military leveling buildings and constructing a new area west of Rafah in southern Gaza, one that mirrors a planned so-called humanitarian zone near the Marag axis. But it remains unclear when or whether this new plan will be realized. One Israeli official says the government is waiting for a visit by U.S. President Donald Trump to the region. The Palestinians in Gaza are left to face death, destruction, and starvation as Israel continues to block humanitarian aid and wage its war on the Strip. Hamda Salhout, Al Jazeera.
As you can see, this just from what few views you've got right there in that video, everything's just destroyed. These are Palestinians trying to get whatever the world, some type of soup or or something. I don't know. I'm not sure what this is. For food, they're scrounging for food because they've been on our blockade for I don't even know how many days now. Well over 60. Um, complete siege of all food, medicines, anything. Like they're completely they're on the brink of complete catastrophic famine at this point. Like they haven't been this whole entire time. Like to the extent that they haven't been. There's it's like up to this point, Israel was constantly like trying to withhold and restrict. So it was like they were constantly like getting up to that point, and then some stuff would get in, it would help pull it back a little bit, and then they'd go back to the point. It's like it was like this up and down thing as far as people having access to food, and the threat of famine and hunger and starvation and stuff would creep up, and then it would some stuff would get in and it would come down a little bit, but then it would creep back up, and it was never enough material actually getting in to really make a significant difference on the humanitarian side. But now it's just through the roof. No, there's nothing getting in. This is the longest period yet that anything has gotten in. So it's just crazy how bad it's getting. But that was what was being explained there, that they plan on, you saw the overview that everything looked destroyed. They're trying to take over, create a barrier. They're going to, do military actions within this, area to what I am assuming is to try to get it, like I said, get rid of Hamas, so to speak. And they, do not plan to leave. They plan to stay there. The next section of this video is a lady. I also feel it needs to be seen. She's going to talk about the situation from Israeli side. Like, she is an Israeli in Tel Aviv, and she's a part of a humanitarian group that is activist of to some degree. A group that is kind of works between Israeli and Palestinian people, and they're trying to force or press the government to stop these actions. They're anti-war group, and they don't agree in the actions. They're like she even states at one point that they are like the biggest enemy of the Israeli government. And so, anyways, but I think what she says is very important and needs to be heard. So we'll continue.
We're now going to speak to Robbie Damelin, who's the spokeswoman of the Parent Circle Families Forum, joining us from Tel Aviv this hour. Thank you for your time. So we now know that the Israeli Security Cabinet has approved these plans to expand its military occupation in Gaza and effectively just take it all. How do you think this decision is going to impact families, Palestinian families and Israeli families?
But all war impacts families. I don't think that people see what happens to people during the war. What is the consequence of all this madness? This is really, I think, the darkest time for Israel and Palestine. I know you have all the political experts talking about it, but I want to talk about the human factor. I want to talk about the people on the ground that are working to make change, because that's what's important. You can hear all the political experts, world experts on peace, or world experts on war, or the Houthis, and all of the other things that I've heard on your program. But do you ever meet Ma'ozi Non, whose parents were burned to death on the 7th of October, and he is creating an organization which is having the largest anti-war event on this Thursday and Friday. It's called the People's Peace Summit. Thousands and thousands of people will gather in Jerusalem to try to find a way to end this madness. We cannot go on killing each other. I think of the human consequence. I think of the women and the children in Gaza, and I can't bear to be part of this situation. And so I will do everything in my power to make change. We have Palestinian partners who have not left the parent circle since the 7th of October. In fact, they have lost huge amounts of family in Gaza and also in the West Bank, and yet they stay and talk for peace. And we had this week a ceremony on Memorial Day where thousands of Palestinians and Israelis came to listen, both in the West Bank and in Tel Aviv. And people all over the world were listening to this beautiful ceremony where people, Palestinians, could come and tell their story.
Right.
Where Musa, who tells his story of losing 25 of his family members, one a doctor who came home to find his wife and child had been killed, and yet he still maintains the message of reconciliation.
Let me just jump in there for a second on that message of reconciliation. And just for clarity, your association, the Parents Circle Families Forum, it's a joint Israeli-Palestinian organization of over 700 families, right, who've all lost an immediate family member to the ongoing conflict. But do you feel like your work is making a difference at all?
I can only tell you that for me, when the 7th of October happened, it was like almost the same as when I heard my son had been killed. I wanted to change the world overnight. And the survival tactic is to work as hard as you can. And so I've been to America for 7 times. I've been to Italy and England and you name it, to try to stop the polarization, to try to stop people from importing our conflict and creating hatred between Jews and Muslims. And I can tell you that at this ceremony that we had the other night, there were the most extraordinary people. One of them was a hostage, and she was released, and her husband was killed, and his body is still in Gaza. And so if those kind of people can come and talk out for peace, then call all these wonderful politicians all over the world. Why don't they support the NGOs on the ground who are working to end the conflict, who are working day and night to try to find another way, to try to find a political solution? Yes, we have the worst government that we've ever had. We have the most dangerous people. But if we don't work to stop this, then what is the future for my grandchildren?
That was my question to you, in fact, is that you have a right-wing government in Israel. Some would say probably the most right-wing government Israel has ever had. So how does your talk of peace and reconciliation actually go down at home?
Well, we were thrown out of the schools where we've been working for many, many years cross-border into Israeli classrooms, but we don't give up. That is the point. You can try to stop this. We are probably the most unpopular organization with this present government because we are a threat, because we are the human consequence. If bereaved parents, and by the way, we are now 800 members since October the 7th, which is heartbreaking, but we have the most extraordinary people who have joined, people who lost members of their family on the 7th, whose parents were burned to death, whose children were killed. And think about all the children in Gaza, and if you really want to help, then get somebody to force the government to allow food in for everybody and mainly for children, because they are the consequence of this madness. How many children must die before they will realize? You know, there is this human picture in my mind all the time of a little boy standing in Gaza with his cat. And he said he's not going to leave home to go with his parents to the south to run away if he can't take his cat. And eventually the parents were persuaded to take the cat. And then I saw a girl coming out of the hostages carrying her dog. These are the human consequences. What of the kids that are growing up in Gaza, where there's a war every 2 years? What kind of adults will they be if they have no freedom of movement and they can't protect their families? And what kind of adults will come out of Gaza, not out of Gaza, out of Sderot and Ashkelon and Ashdod, the Israeli towns that have been rocketed all the time? You spoke about the Houthi missile. I was in my safe room for a long time yesterday. These are the consequences. This whole nation is walking around in trauma,
Right.
as well as the Palestinians. And we have to be rid of this anger and start to talk to each other. Even if we don't agree, we have to listen with empathy.
Okay. On that note, we will leave it there. Robbie Damelin, you're the spokeswoman for the Parent Circle Families Forum, speaking to us from Tel Aviv this hour. We thank you for your time.
And I hope that you will tune in to the People's Peace Summit. Thank you so much.
What she's talked about is reality. The fact that is something I've tried to stress before too, is that the fact that these type of actions have a psychological effect on the population, and Israel population as well as Palestinian population. These are this area has been under these conditions of constant war, constant fighting, constant conflict for decades now. Where you have Israel, their government that's been in place, and has been a different range of governments over the decades. But as they stated, the one that's currently in there is the absolute most right wing, far authoritarian, like warmongering style government that they have ever had. And they've had some right wing rough governments in the past few decades, but this is the absolute worst. Netanyahu, by all means, is just straight out warmonger, just in my opinion, just a straight up evil man. And there's and the problem is that he's not even the worst in that security cabinet. That Smotrich guy is like probably 10 times worse than him. These people do not care about life. They don't even care. They don't care about Palestinian life, period. But they don't even really completely care about their own citizens' lives. I mean, you saw there were families from people who are still in Gaza, still under, still hostages in Gaza, that have been begging since the beginning for these conflicts to end, and for the Israeli government to work, like, prioritize those hostages being pulled out of Gaza at any cost. And they just haven't done it. We've had, two considerable, significant ceasefires that allowed for, the first one back in, the November, and then back in the first November, not even last November, the previous November, and then not again until what was it, last month January, February, that where we had those I guess it was roughly about 60 days worth of a ceasefire, and some guys were able to be gotten out then. But then once again, just like the first time, Israel creates conditions to where they break the ceasefire and blame Hamas, and then they go all back at it again, because they never intend on the ceasefire to continue. They don't intend on a peace being gotten, peace being brought about, which is what this lady is fighting for, is for peace. That's what she's asking for. Why can't we all just live in peace? She wants the conflict to stop, regardless of whether it's Israel or the Palestinian side. She just wants everybody to be able to live in peace. Why are we stop this? And this is all brought about, like I said, about from Israel and their blockade and suppression of the Palestinian people for decades. And the just natural effect of that is resistance groups within the areas coming out in resistance to the Israeli government and what they've been doing. That's what the Houthis are. I mean, sorry, not the Hamas is a resistance group. Now, yes, our government and Israel has declared them terrorists because they have done actions that have killed people, that they've done actions of attack, but understandably, they have done those actions because of the actions that Israel has done to them. Israel is constantly doing what they, has done for years now, decades even, of the, mow the grass campaign, where they just, from time to time, kill some people to keep them in line and whatnot. And it's just something that they have been doing all along. And these are the type of actions for no reason whatsoever. And these are the type of actions that, that incentivize these groups within the population to rise up in, to against the Israeli government and the actions of the IDF and stuff. So this, I mean, it's any group of people, this would happen in. You can't. Yes, you can say and find that actions by a group of people where that have taken that harm innocent people, that's bad. We consider it terrorism, and it's bad. But the same thing goes for a military group like the IDF, Israel's IDF, and whatnot, that does the same thing, that kills innocent people in Gaza, in the West Bank, and we don't call them terrorists. We should, because quite frankly, in my opinion, they are. But they're not established as terrorists, because Israel doesn't look at the people in in Gaza. They don't look at Palestinian people as innocent people. They look at them. They don't even look at them as humans. They look at them as outcasts, as animals. They don't consider. So the preciousness of life, the morality of preserving life is unfounded when it comes to Israel and how they perceive the Palestinian people. They don't look at them like that. The Israeli government, and to an extent, even some of the population of Israel, because they've been, conditioned through Israeli TV and the propaganda and stuff like that has been pushed on them for decades now, to, in fact, look at the Palestinians the same way. And this is the condition that has happened. So you've got a whole civilization in Israel that have, they are under the impression that they're constantly under attack. So their mentality of this defensive thing, in the perception of a people always trying to attack them, even though they have this great defensive, barrier that pretty much protects them 99% of the time, where the people in Gaza do not have that. They are when they are attacked, it is full blown death. And you have, on the same flip side of that coin, a group of population in Gaza of Palestinians who are constantly under attack and suppression, oppression from Israel. In the psyche of that is these kids, all the people that have died in this conflict over the past year and a half. The families uprooted, parents, gone, kids orphaned. There's been unknown number, a high percentage of what kids are still um, alive in Gaza are, amputated or, missing legs, missing arms. And those that have done that, they've had to been removed without the ability to be, used anesthetic and stuff. So it was, the psyche of thinking about that, having your limb removed with no painkillers, you have to feel it all. And that's what many of these kids have went through. This is torture. This is torture on them. Think about this: little kids, toddlers, children, what we would consider like preteens. These are all little kids that have been went through this, and like I said, many of them orphaned. They're either don't have any family left, or they're having to be taken care of by other families, or maybe even potentially some of them on their own. This is what she's. And then now they're under a blockade. They've been under a blockade now where food is scarce and becoming more and more scarce by the day. We've seen photos and stuff of malnourished or straight up starved children, skin and bones, even adults too. It's hard to talk about this situation at this point without really just losing yourself and like feeling this overwhelming emotion of anger and frustration and annoyance that these actions have continued just wide open like this, and there's no genuine effective pushback. Our government is complicit in it, is as bad as it was under Biden, where they were basically just allowing them to do it, but wagging their fingers a little bit and try to do it as good as you can, try to be as nice about it as you can though while you're doing it, while you're committing all these war crimes and genocide. Now under Trump and his regime, it's just full on whatever. We're not, do what you need to do, finish it up. It's just looking ugly now, like, because Trump only concerned about its image and the image of the country and how we've, so he's just like, just finish it up, just do what you need to do and get it done with, okay, fine, we'll own the place, we'll rebuild and we'll make it pretty again. I'll put a tower up with my name on it and shit. That's all he's concerned about. He doesn't care about life, and how any of this has affected these people, regardless of whether we're talking about Palestinians, who were probably, arguably the most affected by this whole situation, or Israelis and how they have been affected by it. It is, you can only try to imagine, because we have never faced anything like that. You can only somewhat try to attempt to imagine what that is like, to be under constant bombardment, to have explosions. I'm talking about not firecrackers and shit, full on fucking bombs dropped all around you at any point. In the middle of the night, you're trying to sleep, can't sleep because there's explosions going off, there's screams going off in the background, fires and burning and hollers and if it ain't you, if you're the one that's not, a bomb doesn't drop on and you are either blown across, out of the building or crushed up underneath rubble, or or just completely vaporized, because there's no telling how many people that's happened to as well. And that is every day. That is every day. there's no way to there's no concept that someone like me, anybody living in the United States can honestly try to connect to that, unless potentially they are from the area and have, come to the United States from the area, or from somewhere like Ukraine, or somewhere like the Congo, or other areas in the world that have, had these type of conflict happening. But if you're homegrown here in the United States, you've never really faced that, unless you were military veteran or whatever, perhaps, okay, but like, you get my point. So this is the psyche of those type of what, how these people are feeling, how they would, what these children will grow up in going forward, even if we can get to some sort of a peace agreement. You can only hope that they don't grow up with, a boiling of animosity, in them over what has happened. Especially if they grow up and they start reading about the history, maybe they don't perfectly remember it. Maybe they're too young, or the trauma, they've blocked out that trauma, but then once they start learning about it again, or whatever, or whatever, it comes back to them. You never know. You can only hope that they will learn from that and just try to, not have that happen again, or not, push themselves to cause any kind of actions to backtrack the situation, or whatever the case. You would hope that they would just learn and try to go forward, realize that it was a bad situation. That's the only thing that's the best you can hope for. And that you're not so psychologically traumatized that they engage in things that would just take them backwards. And not only, Palestinian, but Israeli alike. I mean, this is, it's and that's what I hope. That's the reason why I always I always push for anti-war, anti-intervention, or in all possibilities, try to negotiate, try to, be diplomatic in working out conflict without death, without destruction, without destroying lives. So I don't know what is going to happen going forward. It doesn't look good. There's constant hostilities happening. The wrong governments are in control, particularly U.S. and Israel. But it's not pretty. It's good to see people like this, though, in that area, trying everything they can to change the situation. And you can only hope that somehow something will give and will turn the population to create pressure, and enough pressure that even the Israeli government can't push back against it and continue doing what they've been doing, or our government for that matter too. There needs to be an uprising here as well to do the same. Anyways, thank you very much for joining me. Let me know in the comments what you think. Everything's around me. Check out any channels or whatnot. You know what to do. Do the damn thing. And until next time, peace. Clear Talk. I'm out.